Hello. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin in 2025, what the bear case is, the base case is, and what the bull case is. Now, it's a pretty high range. I found a pretty interesting article in Cointelegraph. Some I agree with, some I don't. But we're going to use that as a template in talking through this and what I think about each case. Now, there's three cases they lay out. A bear case of $150,000. Now, $150,000 was actually my goal, so I'm not quite as bullish as they are. A base case, they say, of $225,000 and a bull case of $400,000 Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin is really going to go close to 400,000. I know some of you are even more bullish than I am about this crypto bull run, thinking it's going to go past 400,000. I just don't really see that. I'm willing to be proven wrong because realistically, if Bitcoin goes higher, we all make more money. So that's good. But either way, there's several conditions that have to be met for the base case, the bull case, and the bear case. And we're going to see what they say and what I actually think about them. So basically, let's start with the bear case of 150K. Now, 150K is my goal target, but I have other definitions for them. I don't actually think 150K is a bear case. So what Blockware, which is the company that does this research, said 150K is a target, is a possibility if Trump does not follow through on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, I've said this several times. I don't think he should create one until we get the hash rate problem out of the way. So there are people like Jack Mallers, who's the CEO and founder of Strike, that think he will actually likely issue an executive order on his first day in office to designate Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Now, Trump is the one known to make big splashes, so he might do that. I think he's looking at the possibility of that as a little too high, though. So I don't really think that he'll issue an executive order on his first day in office to designate Bitcoin as a U.S. reserve asset. He might do it in the future, or he might not do it at all. And I don't think as a whole, people's expectations are that high as on the first day. Now, if he does do that on the first day, I think that can send Bitcoin up to $125, $130 and 130,000 immediately almost. And there will be very, very much aggressive buying in the market particularly. He also said that the bear case is a possibility if the Fed keeps on not cutting interest rates, meaning that, right now, they've already said only 2 interest rate cuts for next year. If they go down to say 0, that could be a very, very bearish case and people might actually sell Bitcoin. Now, I think the only way that happens is if inflation flares back up, not just stops decreasing, but actually increases. And I can definitely see that as a possibility, but only if he actually follows through day one with the tariffs and they cause prices to go up almost in the immediate future. I don't really see that happening within the first year, so I don't think that's a real possibility. However, if he does not do the Bitcoin reserve and he does the tariffs immediately, they completely make prices go up, inflation goes back up, and the economy sags, then I believe that we can have a very bearish case where we already have gone to the top and we just don't really go any higher. That's the worst case in my opinion. The worst case in their opinion is either or of those things at $150,000. Now, at 150K, I still think altcoins are going to run a lot. Now, moving on to their base case, which I think is their most likely case, that's $225,000. And that's assuming the US government turns its Bitcoin holdings into a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But that just means they stop selling the Bitcoin they have. That does not actually mean they start accumulating more Bitcoin. So basically, the US, I think, has something like 183,000 Bitcoins, about half as much as Michael Saylor, seized from Silk Road. And they've been selling it periodically over the last several years, ever since they got it, essentially. But this is the case where there's a reserve and we put that in the reserve instead of continuously selling it, which I think is a good idea at this point, because that's a pretty big reserve for the United States. But this would not require the U.S. to buy any more Bitcoin. However, this might actually cause government to want to seize ever more Bitcoin for illegal use to pump up that reserve. So I'm not really sure how I feel about that. But that is their kind of base case target. So if there's a Federal Reserve, if tariffs don't tank the economy and there's a Federal Reserve and we stop selling the Silk Road stuff, we can go to 225,000. Now, I think that is a likely scenario. My price projections aren't quite as high as 225, but it's not impossible. They also said the $400,000 bull case has to have three conditions be met. So basically, first of all, the Federal Reserve must adopt a more dovish stance as headline consumer price index declines. That I think is unlikely because Jerome Powell, it basically looks at data and determines what he's going to do based on data. He doesn't really care about which party or who is in office. He just kind of like does his job as Fed commissioner. And I don't think he's going to adopt a more dovish stance on CPI headlines. He will adjust rates as he sees fit. And of course, second, corporate Bitcoin adoption must accelerate with one of the Magnificent Seven, which is Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, Nvidia, or Tesla, adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. Now, Tesla has some Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but they need to add more. Microsoft already voted no, but Amazon's vote is actually coming up. And I do believe one of those has a pretty decent chance of actually adding some Bitcoin, hopefully in 2025. And of course, last, the US has to not only convert its existing holdings into a strategic reserve, but also accumulate more Bitcoin. And I think that's fairly unlikely, and Galaxy Digital obviously agrees with me. I think the most they'll do, if they even establish a reserve, is to basically convert what they have into a reserve. So I really don't see the $400,000 base case playing out. Like, based on what I see, I think the max, even according to their plot, I think like the max price Bitcoin can reach is about 300,000, where you have like the US government turns its Bitcoin holdings into a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and the Fed cuts interest rates as expected. And of course, there's more bullish sentiment as one or two of the Magnificent Seven adopts more Bitcoin into the reserve, be it Alphabet, Apple, or Amazon. So I think that could maybe push it up to $300,000 by their calculations. So my basically range is between $108,000 and $300,000 with a likely case of $150,000, where their range is $150,000 to $400,000 with a likely middle ground of $225,000. I think they're being just a little too optimistic, and I'm going to tone it down a little bit with my predictions. I still think altcoins are going to run, and I'd love for it to reach 200, 300, 400,000, but I'm thinking about $150,000. But more of these kind of like prerequisites could actually be met in the future, which would change the entire ballgame. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.